Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian and this is Crusader Kings III 17th Dev Diary. This one is about governments, vassal management, laws and raiding, and this one is a fairly big one, and I'm not just saying this because this one is a lengthy one, which it is. This one is very special because especially inheritance but also the vassal management are things that we need to talk about at length, and I think that is exactly what we're going to do here. Now raiding is also in this, raiding is very cool and all that, but that's the end of it. Let's just jump straight into it because there's a lot to be said about this one, and my god, let's not waste any more time than we have to. So let's start with government. This one is written by Meneth, if you haven't heard of him. Meneth has been around for quite some time, very successful programmer and very successful at PDS. And Meneth is going to lead us here, going to guide us through all of these topics. So there are three basic playable governments. I assume that, for example, Republic still exists, but obviously it's not playable, theocracy and so on. But the primary governments that are playable by the player are feudal, tribal and clan. Clan essentially being ICTA accepted as changed to a degree that makes it considerably better. At least that is the very positive takeaway for clan from my personal perspective, but let's go there. So, feudal realms play pretty similarly to CK2, focusing on claims and inheritance more so than the other government forms. A new addition in CK3 is Feudal Contracts. Every feudal vassal, except barons, have an individual contract with you. I am blown away by just how good this is. And I want to show you why this is such a huge change. In CK2, when you were a king, for example, what you would do is you would go to the law page and then you would look at the law page and you would say, wow, look at all these obligations. I can change any of these and I have to do it for the entire realm. I will make every single vassal more angry because they will have to give me more levies or they will have to give me more money. Same for the burghers, the church and the tribal ones. Historically speaking, this was not the case. Historically speaking, some kings had some core vassals that they cared about the most, and those core vassals gave them most of their levy. Some kings were incredibly weak and just got slightly less, people from whatever vassal they had. For example, oftentimes the Holy Roman Emperors were kind of fighting with the Bavarian dukes and so on and so forth. There's a lot of dynamics going on, and this is something that has always bothered me. Because everything that we have here on this page is set in stone. There's either left or right, there's no, hey, I only want to do it for certain regions, I only want to do it for certain lords and ladies, that sort of stuff. It is a very predefined system. Now with the new system that they're introducing here, which is the Feudal Contract, you can change it on a vassal per vassal basis. Meaning, for example, this is the Duchess Matilda of Tuscany, and Duchess Matilda of Tuscany is being asked by the Holy Roman Empire to give the, amount of a high feudal obligation level, meaning that she will be very unhappy, minus 20 opinion with her, and on top of that, this is an act of tyranny, causing all subjects to lose 20 opinion. You can avoid the opinion penalty if you have a hook on her. For example, you know that she maybe is cheating on her husband, that she maybe murdered some of her husbands in the past, and because of that, or any other hook that you have really, let's be honest here, but because of that, you can say, Matilda, what would you think? Would you like to, give me more troops to serve the emperor? And she will say, oh yeah, as long as you keep quiet. So the way this works is quite essentially that we are in a situation now where we can individually negotiate with our individual vassals, making the individual vassals even more important, because now we won't just hover over the screen and say, I need more troops right now, let's just have the council vote on it. I can kick this entire council out, put people in that are yes men, and then all of a sudden everybody has to pay more. That is a thing of the past. Right now, we are much more on a fluid, on an individual level, and I am in love with this. This is the directly correct step as far as I'm concerned. Also interesting, by the way, gains 35 stress because you are generous. How nice of him. Set new obligation level, high feudal obligations. You could use a hook right here. You can only change the obligations once for each character, meaning per life you can only renegotiate it once. I'm hoping that as a vassal you can also renegotiate your own contract by going to your king and saying, either I have a hook on you, or you're gonna do this right now because you are weak and are risking a civil war otherwise. I'm hoping that it is a two-sided affair. That would be very cool, but the entire idea of this is a huge step forward. High levels are usually better, though perhaps not if you're at risk of your vassals revolting, but cannot be imposed unilaterally. A new addition, right, all of this is already done. So the way I see it, this is very cool. It makes vassals more important because you can take an individual and a regional approach. For example, let's say that, I don't know, I'm the Holy Roman Emperor, of course, not in 867, and Bavaria is uppity. I say, Bavaria, calm down, I'm going to give you low feudal obligations so that you don't hate me. And then I'm going to raise the feudal obligations, for example, in the north, because the Norsemen, I don't like them anyway, they live too close to the sea. The idea behind this is absolutely magnificent. Now that was it for the feudal government in terms of huge changes that are going on. Let's move on to the clan government. The clan government type is used by most Muslim realms. Obligations are heavily based on opinion rather than being contractual, because everything here is meant for the realm to be governed by your dynasty. This is something that was already implemented in CK2. You can see that right here. If I go down to the Tulunids, and let's hope that they have a lot of children. Look at this. Muslim realms, historically speaking, were governed by the dynasty, and the dynasty that was in charge, you know, whenever they fell, the entire dynasty would be blasted. Now, the way this works, essentially, in CK2 is that we have something called Decadence. And Decadence is a religious feature because it means that you are amassing decadence, which only the Sunni realms have, but let's be real here, it is actually tied to the government, seeing as Sunni realms and Shia realms and any Muslim realm are all Iqta. So Iqta comes with Decadence guaranteed, and with that being the case, the way Decadence works is the game wanted to encourage you to give out land, because otherwise people would become decadent, give you Decadence, and then you would face a massive rebellion. This game mechanic is essentially absolute nonsense. It's a cool idea, sure, but it certainly doesn't work, because what you just do is you either just imprison them, you just kill them because you have a reason to do it, you just tell them to straighten up. There are so many opportunities to get rid of the penalty of Decadence. It was an absolutely flawed system. Now in this one, they are trying to encourage you giving land to your family much more and much more effectively than CK2 did it. With happy vassals providing significantly more taxes and levies than unhappy ones, this government puts more emphasis on the family rather than the realm, with most vassals being members of your dynasty. I don't know, because they don't say it, but I hope that they encourage and force in some way that you actually have to give out land to your family. Maybe, you know, if you have to give out land that isn't your family, it will give you less levies, something like this. It's not mentioned, Meneth. I wish that Meneth had mentioned it, but I like the idea behind this, where Decadence as a broken, you know, a broken mechanic just isn't employed anymore, and we work much more just by forcing you in some way to give land to the people of your family. Although, again, it's sadly not detailed how you do it. It's a mystery. I hope that it works. If it doesn't, then the Muslims would be exactly as kind of uninteresting. You know, I have a huge... I could always go on a tangent about Muslims in CK2 because they are so underdeveloped, and it makes my heart bleed. But with that being said, if they can enforce that we have to give out any sort of titles as a Muslim ruler to our family, you know, the AI always does it, we usually don't do it as a player, of course. Why would you do it, right? Because you can game the open succession right here if you don't hand out titles, but I hope that they enforce it in a more effective way than Decadence, because that would make playing the clan government much more enticing. So, very little information about the clan government. I can only hope that they figure it out, but we don't know. Let's move on. Oh, to the last point, actually. A clan invasion CB, which can be used once in a lifetime at the highest level of fame to invade a kingdom, providing a powerful boon for a well-established clan ruler. I think doing it once in a lifetime is the right balance. They didn't really strike that balance in CK2. Muslims were very effective at warring and at conquering and blobbing, and hopefully that is restricted now to one clan invasion, and then the rest has to be normal wars. Finally, we have tribal realms. Much like CK2, these have their own tribal holding type, providing more troops but less tax. Classic, because you have to raid, of course, to get income and prestige, but the troops themselves are fully provided by your holdings. Let's just, for example, over here, you can see that most of the buildings that you can build, they don't really need money anyway, but all of them provide quite a healthy amount of troops, and you need prestige, which you can get from raiding. It's a self-reinforcing cycle, quite powerful. Additionally, most tribals are able to go on raids, which you can read more about below. Right, let's go to that in a second. Tribal realms are unaffected by development and cause non-tribal realms to have lower supply limits in their lands, making them a tougher nut to crack, but reducing the influence as their years drag on. Tribal realms also pay for men-at-arms using prestige rather than gold, very similar to how you can buy a retinue as a tribal ruler with prestige and piety. And those, by the way, if you buy one in CK2 with piety, then the cost for that retinue will also be piety. But they changed that since retinues are no longer in CK3. The men-at-arms are now spent for by using wonderful prestige, allowing smaller realms to punch above their weight. Tribal rulers base their obligations on levels of fame rather than on contracts or opinion. The more famous your ruler is, the more troops and money your vassals will be willing to provide for your pursuits. That's exactly right. The feudal contract, of course, very limited to actual feudal Europe, although even there it was quite limited in the way that it works. Very difficult, very, I think, a topic for like multiple essays, which I'm sure have already been written, but tribal realms were a bit different from that. They were mostly obligation, mostly honor-based when it comes to respect and, you know, who you serve, and that is exactly what this system tries to emulate here. Of course, CK2 already tried to emulate that, and frankly, the tribal system in CK2 is pretty decent. It is quite well done, and I hope that CK3 does everything that it already did right also right there again. The more famous your ruler is, the more troops and money your vassals will be willing to provide for your pursuits. Essentially a self-reinforcing cycle as well right here. Let's just hope that that works out. Finally, tribal rulers have a once-in-a-lifetime subjugation CB, allowing them to forcibly vassalize an entire realm. Very nice. Although I could see that being quite easy to exploit. I mean, just think about, you know, being too rough and then you invade the HRE. Maybe, listen. If you can pull it off, I guess, the question will be, can your descendants actually keep it together? We will have to see how powerful that is. We will have to see how exactly the CB works. Right now, we don't really know too much about it. Whether this means that the subjugation CB, when it comes to conquering the titles around yourself, you know, for example, what I can do right now, if I'm a tribal ruler, I can go and I can say, I want to be... Oh, I can't do it because I'm not actually him. But you have the ambition, I want to be the king of this region, and then you can start declaring subjugation wars against other pagans to subjugate that kingdom and then later form it. Whether those are gone because it says a once-in-a-lifetime subjugation CB, I don't think they are. I think this is just a special subjugation CB, but I hope that they still exist because tribal rulers blobbing out into kingdoms is, you know, part of the dream, you could say. As the game goes on, you can eventually reform out of tribalism, becoming a clan or feudal realm instead. What I am hoping, I'm so much praying for this, is that non-Muslims can also be the clan government. I assume this to be the case, primarily because it is now called the clan government instead of Ikta, which is a, you know, specifically Muslim term, but you can't ever be sure. And by the way, oh god, yeah, nothing about the imperial government, by the way, guys. Don't know how to feel about that, but maybe that comes later. You can hopefully reform out of, you know, tribalism into the clan government, even as a Christian person. Not everybody had the feudal realm contract design, not everybody had this going on, so I hope that it works out indeed. Now over here we have the Vassal Management tab. It's quite interesting, you can see the domain, vassals, and succession. The succession screen they sadly won't show us. The domain screen we will see later, so let's not bother with that. This is the crown authority as, you know, we know it, low, middle, high, max, etc, etc. Feudal Empire, realm size 233, listed right here, and then we have the powerful vassals, and then later on the normal vassals as well. Here we can see which kind of obligations they actually give us. We can renegotiate the original feudal contracts, and then over here we have, I think they lowered this. I don't actually know what this means. I assume that he is not giving you the proper amount, maybe because he has a negative opinion, but then again, he also has a negative opinion and yet does give you everything. It doesn't have the same modifier. I wonder whether, you know, for example, there's an amnesty. Duke Albert Azzo II of Lombardy does not have to give as many troops. I wonder whether the player did this or whether Alberto Azzo is simply refusing to hand over troops. Either way, down here we see Dread, which is a neat measurement, you know, being that visible. The vassal limit still exists, much like CK2, and then we can see your specific income from the main and vassals, which right now, actually, many people don't know this. I'm not even kidding. Many people do not know that you have to click the primary title of a person to see income and expenses for that person. But actually, you could go for any title they hold, I suppose, now that I look at it. Yeah, okay, any title they hold is fine, but many people actually don't know that that is where you see their income. They only go over here. So, this is now quite more visible. I think that is very, very good for quality of life. Lastly, the screen shows you powerful vassals. Much like in CK2's Conclave DLC, your realm will have some powerful vassals. These expect to be seated on the council and will make their displeasure known if that is not the case. So very standard, we all know how this works, we've all seen it. At the very least, if you have played with the right mods, you can see all of these people are powerful vassals. If you put them off the council, not only will they hate you because you fired them, like I just fired that fella, but they will also get a huge modifier. There it is, -40, 1 seat on the council. So in CK3, again, we have to care about powerful vassals. I like the idea. I really like focusing it down to the powerful vassals, to the individual contracts, that sort of thing. I think that is nice. You know, you can play out powerful vassals against one another. You can, for example, say, hey, you give me more via the feudal contract, and then you can say to Duke Berthold of Carinthia, you can give me less because you already hate me and I don't want to push you any further. Meaning that you can, you know, individually negotiate and kind of pull the tug of war here in your direction whenever you need it, and give a little bit of room whenever you need, you know, them to not rebel. Now, down here we have the domain overview. As mentioned before, we have the Duchy of West Franconia, and then it shows, so this is essentially where your domain holding is, in which duchy. So, for example, we have the County of Klingenberg under our direct control. You can see development and control. So this is how prosperous this is, and this is how well you are exploiting the prosperity. Then we can see its holdings, or rather its buildings in the holding. and we see the income that we get directly. And this is, of course, located in Duchy of West Franconia. I like this list. This looks quite nice. It looks quite comfy. It reminds me, of course, of the Outliner, but this one doesn't actually tell you where things are. I think this is a good way of taking a look at all of your titles. And here you can see we hold 2 titles in the Duchy of East Franconia as well. We got some empty holdings that something could be built in. I assume that we are holding that directly. I like the idea. I mean, you are holding it directly as soon as you hold a county. I like the idea that you can see it here and build up the holding from this list. Then we have the domain tab. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. Now let's move on to the succession tab, because I got some stuff to say about succession. Positive and negative. Let's just phrase it like that. Let's walk our way through it, shall we? Due to being a bit of work in progress, I'm afraid we cannot show you a picture of the succession tab. You can see it right here. No picture for that. Here you can change your succession laws, see your heirs, and check what titles, if any, you will lose when you die. If you hold any elective titles, you'll be able to easily get the election screen from here. Very similar to this one, I suppose, but I think it will be looking better. I think the quality of life is a huge thing that is very much something we shouldn't underestimate. Polotsk or rather, the Ducal Lord of Polotsk and whatnot. If you're a new player, you will find this and you will be like, what the hell is going on? Then you will see if you hold multiple titles, like, for example... Who holds multiple titles? No, they're all just level 1 here, I suppose. Yeah, that sucks, kind of. I just really wanted to show off when you see multiple titles here. Oh, actually, I'm an idiot. So, like, when you click, for example, right here, you will see these 2, and I assume, honestly, that a new player will look at this and be like, what the fuck is going on? Why are there 2 succession laws? Who are you? Now, as an experienced player, of course, you know, this is yours, this is your lieges. But I think rearranging this is good. We can't judge yet how good it is, but I can only agree that that needed a rework. Now, let's move on to the different things. They also mention here, by the way, I just want to mention this before we dive into the succession law topic. Like in CK2, we have ground authority for feudal and clan realms and tribal authority for tribal realms. Higher levels of authority unlock mechanics like imprisonment. For tribals, the others start with it. Title revocation, restrictions on eternal wars, and heir designation. We know all of those laws. Heir designation is new as a normal law that commonly is not that, but, you know, it's nice. That's very nice to see. Oh, well, it is locked in a different way, but that's fair. That's fair. However, increasing these levels will make your vassals unhappy. Tribal authority is significantly less powerful than crown authority, representing how tribal governments over time gradually got supplanted by feudal and clan governments. Let's talk about succession. So this is not the succession screen. I just want to make this clear. This is the succession change screen, okay? This is where you open a screen and then you see all forms of succession that you can choose. And I gotta tell you, I'm split on this entire topic. Now, this is something that you can see. What matters now is not the voting of the council, because, as I said earlier, in CK2 it is very easy to just exchange the entire council with Yesmen, for example. Let me just show that off here. I would hire a new noble, and that new noble would say, wow, I really like you, my friend. Also, I don't even get the event when I do that, but as you can see now, I got some people that like me considerably more than the people down here, so I'm going to put Apollonios on here, for example, and he will most certainly vote with me. Now, this has changed in CK3, because the only people voting on these things now are the powerful vassals, whether they are on your council or not. So the way I see it, this is a good thing to circumvent players like myself from abusing the council mechanic. This is nice. I appreciate this. This is also quite nice. The partition succession is what we currently have, and it is thoroughly explained. If you clicked on this, then I assume this would pop up here. Very nice that they explain it. Very nice that they explain all the bonuses and everything, how it, you know, goes. But, and here comes the but. Let's talk about this, okay? So, we have 3 options for multiple heirs. This is essentially Gavelkind. Confederate Partition Succession, okay? Confederate Partition Succession, as explained down here, is essentially elective Gavelkind, as in, you may not be able to vote on it, but when a realm gets split and there are multiple kingdom tier titles that can be created, or highest tier titles anyway, they will be created. So in elective Gavelkind, this is exactly how it works, and let me just see if I can show it off. Do you have multiple sons? I just want to show it off in case you forgot about it. Debug mode, give title, I think it is D Novgorod. Please tell me this is the right one. 6859. I wish I could destroy this title, actually. I just gave it to him. I'm an idiot. No, you know what? Actually, this should be fine, right? It probably won't be fine. Can't even show it off properly. It would create, let's say, okay, I bunked this. Don't worry about it. If the Duchy of Novgorod were not created, if he would not hold it, but he has 2 children, then it would be created under elective Gavelkind. The primary title, Polotsk, would go to this child, and then the other one would go to this one. In normal Gavelkind, that only happens if you have multiple top-tier titles. If you only have one, then it doesn't actually split the realm. So, Confederate Partition is essentially the same creation of kingdom tier or of top tier titles as elective Gavelkind, except it isn't really elective. Then we have Partition Succession, which is normal Gavelkind. Your realm stays together if you only have one top tier primary title. If you have multiple ones, then it obviously splits, but that is just how it works. And then we have the high tier partition. Under high partition, your primary heir will always get at least half your titles, so it doesn't matter. If you've got 2 or 10 kids, your primary heir will get the same amount of land. So this is essentially what you strive for, especially when you are uncivilized, when you are a small realm. But I have now thought about this for a long time, and this is an idea that I have voiced, of course, also towards Paradox, but let's be real, I'm just some random dude voicing it, and that is fair. They are game developers, they do this for a living, and we should respect that, but I feel like it would actually be nice, because that is how it historically went. It would actually be nice if we could determine what sort of land our vassals or our kids get. For example, let's take a look at Polotsk here, right? Wouldn't it be nice if High Chief Yelisei could say, okay, so you have a right to, let's say, like 4 provinces, and you have a right to 3 provinces. And then you can select it on the map. And you can say, hey, you get exactly these 3, meaning that it will no longer be border go. I would really like the idea, but in a way where you can't disrespect the right to inherit. So, for example, we can't just sneakily make this primogenitor by giving it all to him. But wouldn't it be nice if we could set up a testament, much like, for example, it was done over here all the time. They did fight over it, of course, which still would be a factor, seeing as they would have claims on one another. But wouldn't it be nice if you could say, hey, you inherit Lotharingia, you West Francia, and so on and so forth, like they did it historically? I think it would be absolutely excellent, and yet it will not be in CK3. It is saddening to me, because this will mean that we still are the subjects of fairly random inheritance. This is especially bad when you have an overseas realm, where then suddenly everything gets split in a weird way. But it is what it is. I like the split of Gavelkind into these 3. They are very clearly explained what they do and how they work. I appreciate that a lot, but I will also tell you yet again, I would prefer it if we had a proper choice of setting up a testament, even if it were to cost, for example, prestige to set up that testament in some sort, bring in a cost, but please do make it so that I can determine who gets which provinces, while the partition percentage stays the same as with the automatic algorithm. I still think the automatic algorithm is a bit of a mistake. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. It is a very important topic to me, I'll be honest with you, because it is just that big a deal in how realms are split. Historically, they didn't say, let's gamble on it, okay? That's all I'm saying. Now, that was everything in terms of Gavelkind. They renamed it for easier access so that people understand it. And then we have this over here. We have oldest child succession, youngest child succession, so primogenitor, ultimogenitor, and house seniority. I want to point out, this is a point that somebody in the Discord sees as very important, and I do agree that that is quite important. House seniority is not actually how that went historically speaking. So, seniority is something where in CK2 already, and in CK3 now as well. In CK2 it is the oldest dynasty member, in CK3 it will be the oldest house member, so there's a dynasty and then you are part of a house in that dynasty, of course. The oldest house member inherits. Now, this is not actually how this went. In many Slav and in many Germanic societies, we have something called the stump principle, or maybe more accurately translated in when it comes to the meaning in English, is the root principle, where whatever you do, you always have to look downwards first. So, for example, if I were to die and I had 3 children, those 3 children would be recognized first in inheritance. Now, if I don't have any children, if we, for example, and this is where seniority comes in, if we go with seniority, then it will be split with my brothers first before it goes to my children at any point. So the way this works is more brother-related, and only if there are no brothers can you go towards the children, or, if necessary, you can go up towards your parents, your uncles, and that sort of stuff. With house seniority, you have the problem that if you have some random-ass grandpa living on the other side of the world, all of a sudden he will inherit it? It just, historically speaking, not exactly the case. Now, I do like house seniority much more than dynastic seniority, because dynasties can be spread out in CK2 all over the world. I mean, the Carlings are, of course, everywhere. If they were in seniority, then that would be quite strange. But with house seniority, you could have individual Carling houses, for example, if you were to create those, that is the thing. And then you would be very limited to, for example, within your own realm when it comes to inheritance. It would be less likely that it would just, random dude living over there says, hey, I'm the king of France now. Instead, it would be like, my brother inherits before me. So I actually like this idea, or before my children. I like this idea. I think it is better done than CK2 seniority, but it is not the strictly speaking, historical seniority. So this one and the Gablekind thing are my big issues, I think. The text we can actually skip because that is pretty much what we've done. We also have what we've just talked about. I mean, we also have a number of variants on elective succession ranging from feudal elective to prince elective HRE succession and a handful of cultural variants. Each of these have different restrictions on who can vote, who can be elected, and how the AI will select who to vote for. So, I just want to say, Imperial, not mentioned once. What happened to Imperial elective? I gotta ask. I want to know, because like this is a long dev diary and I understand that, but I would have liked to see some information on that. I can only hope that we will see a separate East Roman Empire dev diary, because I'm really longing for it. Now, with that being said, we are, of course, the gender laws come in, like in CK2, male only, male preference equal, female preference and female only. That is exactly how it is in CK2. And now let's move on to raiding. I like this topic, raiding, a lot. I think this one is an excellent topic because there are some issues with CK2's raiding. The way CK2's raiding works is that you actually have to take out the castles before you can properly pillage the countryside. Now, of course, that is not exactly how it went. Most of the time they would just go in, you know, capture some quick villages and then get out of there again. And I think it is the right approach to no longer do it that way. And on top of that, CK2 raiders are incredibly mobile. They would just come in, they would raid, and then they would be like, ah, you know what? I saw someone on the horizon. Despite uncoordinatedly raiding, we also have watchtowers everywhere, and we know the enemy is coming from 50 kilometers away, meaning that we will just move out now. This will no longer be the case in CK3. I like it because it makes it so that raiding is more fun. It has to be a more conscious process instead of you just doing random things, and it is more fun to fight raiding, especially seeing as we have no standing troops anymore, no retinues running around on the map, making raid defense easy. So the way this works, you raise a raid army and march or sail over to your target. Only the Norse can raid across the seas. Other raid armies will simply be unable to embark. Remember, there are no ship levies anymore. You just pay to have your troops embark. Now you can see right here, raise local raiders, raise local army, raise all here, meaning you raise your raiders when you raise them. That is when they are determined to be raiders, instead of you raising an army and then determining them to be raiders. This is done in this step now. I like it. What do we have over here? We can see some low quality, elite quality. I have no idea what that means. Knights 4, minute arms 0, levies 640, and all soldiers is, so this is the entire soldiers list right here. Raise local raiders. Raise all raiders that are the closest to this particular rally point as raiders, or raise all armies, I should say. If you only have one rally point, all armies will be raised here. Time to raise 2 days. I like it. I like it. It takes you time to raise armies. What? That's good. Once at your target, your army will start looting the barony therein. This is a pretty quick process, but during it, your army will be unable to move, preventing you from running away from any counter-raiding force. I love it. Look at this. The raid of Lindisfarne is 19 days left, so I assume there was about 30 days at the start. Getting an army, okay, getting an actual army together to fight off raiders in just 30 days is difficult. 664 troops here in this case are raiding against 300 troops that they are taking out by, you know, sieging Lindisfarne down. I really like the idea of this entire concept. Now, as they said, you can raid stuff, you don't even need to siege it, you can raid stuff unless it has any walls. This one is a fort level 0, so meaning we don't actually need to siege it, it just gets raided. You could theoretically, this is also cool because it makes baronies more important to build in. You could also build a wall around this monastery, and then Lindisfarne could no longer be raided, at least not directly until it would be sieged down, meaning they would have to siege and then raid, which makes it significantly harder for raiders. So we have a process here where raiders have more fun because they need to plan their raids a bit better. They can't just drop anywhere and drop out immediately. They actually have to concern themselves with the time it takes to raid, and they will be busy, meaning that their troops won't be able to move, seeing as everybody is plundering and doing other nefarious things. I really like this raiding rework. I am absolutely ecstatic about the way it works because it makes it better and easier for you as a defender to counter it, even without standing troops, but it also makes it just a bit less brain, you know, like I always just switch my brain off whenever I raid in CK2, but in CK3, no longer a possibility. Another significant change is that if you beat a raid army, you receive all the gold they're carrying. This means that even if you cannot respond instantly to a raid, it is still very much worth it to beat up the raiders. Hold me, because they have reached the perfection of raiding, as far as I'm concerned. Just like in CK2, a raid army is limited in how much loot it can carry based on the army size. Loot is deposited once the army is back in friendly lands, after which you may either disband or go raiding once more. In the quality of life aside, on the quality of life side, we now show on the map what provinces have already been raided when you have a raided army selected. This makes it easy to see what places to avoid. Hovering over a province will also tell you how much loot raiding it will provide. Huge. Until now, we would always have to do this and, like, you know, look at the buildings, look at either the image or the modifiers. No longer is that necessary. Northern England in its natural state. Maneth, you are a joker. So, as I said, I am both positive and negative, and this was an incredibly long dev diary video, but this was an intense dev diary. I'm both happy and unhappy about what we're seeing here. Gavelkind, I would really like something where we can decide, just set up a testament, make it like a 1000 prestige thing, otherwise my heirs have to fight it out, that sort of thing. You know, I would be very happy about it, but it is what it is. When it comes to seniority, for example, Bohemia did it differently, if I remember that correctly. The Germanics in general also did it differently when it comes to that sort of inheritance. Some of them did it. The root principle went quite far. Nobody was like, random old grandpa will now inherit, but it is what it is. It is not bad now that it is a house-oriented thing, because houses are commonly smaller, so that should be fine. But raiding, all the other feudal contracts, it's very cool. I'm a huge fan of all of this. Let me know in the comments, please, what you think about all of this stuff, and what your take is on it, whether you think this is done well, whether you think this is not done well. This is a cute ship, by the way. Look at this. What a cute ship. What a cute raid flag. Let me know in the comments, and I want to thank all of you for tuning in yet again. I want to thank the members of the channel in particular, because they are supporting the channel directly financially and making all of this possible. Namely the Barons Aaron, Stefan, the Richest, T. Snywolf, Emma Mamello, Thomas, and Lachlan, and as well as the Counts, Kemenic 2, Shifty, Ixum the Naughty, and Wombat, and last but not least, the beautiful Dukes, Suspicious Duck, Benedict, Nathan, Knight of Squires, Kenneth, Lexo, Roboman, My Dad Left Me at Arby's, and the absolute legends, Eric and Aiden. Thank you all for supporting the channel directly. If you also want to support the channel, then check out the join button right underneath the video, and definitely let me know. This is a big dev diary, especially after 10 years of focus trees. Let me know what you think about the stuff that we were talking about. Next dev diary will be about war. I'm in love with what is to come here in March, and I will see you later, alligator.